Hi everyone, this is Tommy from StoriesOnBoard. I'm going to show you today how you can connect your story map to your Jira product backlog and synchronize the entire backlog between StoriesOnBoard and Jira in real time and bidirectionally. The visual layout of the story map helps team members and stakeholders to plan more efficiently and communicate details with each other. Planning your product on StoriesOnBoard will also enable your team to stay focused and organized. You can create user personas for your project. You can include their goals, pains, behaviors, any details. It's fully customizable. You can assign user personas to any cards on the board. The story map helps to understand the product backlog from a big picture point of view and access details easily. You can describe high-level user goals and indicate the user journey on the story map, clearly defining how the user is going to be interacting with the solution that you build. You can create user stories, organizing them into releases, and prioritize them. This user-centered product backlog approach enables team members and stakeholders to stay transparent and establishing shared understanding around the project. And now, let's connect our story map to our Jira product backlog. Select Settings, Integration Settings, and connect to Jira. We need to authenticate ourselves. You must hold an administrator license on the Jira side and on StoriesOnBoard side to be able to set up the integration. Upon a successful authentication, you can select the Jira site you want to connect to, then simply accept it to proceed the next step. Once the connection is set, you need to select the project on the Jira side that you want to connect your story map. Then simply connect project. The integration wizard will guide you through the entire integration process. First, you need to identify the hierarchy of the story map and the Jira connection. You can map your Jira epics to the top level of the story map or on the second level, depending how much details you want to display on the story map. User stories will be connected as well and mapped to Jira. Let me proceed on the second level, mapping my Jira epics. In the next step, you can identify what you want to synchronize in real time and bidirectionally between StoriesOnBoard and your Jira backlog. Synchronizing title changes, any description changes of your cards. You can also synchronize estimations in form of story points to the story point field on Jira, and also enabling synchronization for your releases in real time. In the next step, you can select what you would like to export from StoriesOnBoard. I'm going to utilizing my user stories for export. In perspective of import, we will import from Jira user stories to our backlog. You can also identify whether you want to keep your story map nice and tidy. In that case, you can also enable ignoring closed issues when we are importing from Jira, not taking the place from the story map. You can also allow editors whether you want them to allow to be able to import items from Jira or keep it in your administrator hand. It is also possible to map your Jira workflow to the story map. You can create custom states on StoriesOnBoard side and map it to the Jira statuses. On the left side, you can see my statuses and workflow set up in Jira. On the right side, I can also match my StoriesOnBoard statuses to follow its progress as we are proceeding in different stages of our tasks and user stories. Once we set this up, we can proceed to the final step and get starting our work on the story map. Since my board earlier was connecting to Jira, you can also see which card is already synchronizing with my Jira projects from the story map. As I mentioned earlier, Jira epics mapped on the second level of the story map. User stories already piling in different releases in the MVP and release 1. You can see on the board which card is connecting to Jira. The Jira ID number is visible on the tickets, which is already in synchronization with Jira. If you want to create new items on the story map, for example, you can create your user stories manually, or you can ask StoriesOnBoard AI to come up with some user stories. Initially, when you create a story, it stays on StoriesOnBoard, but since synchronizing our connection, we can push it to Jira and the ticket will be created on the Jira side. But first, let's add some details to this user story using StoriesOnBoard AI Assistant to write the story itself, collecting some acceptance criteria to our user story from a technical and non-technical point of view. And let's say we are also going to collect some related subtasks by StoriesOnBoard AI Assistant to this story. Now that we detailed our user story and our description is also filled, we can push this story to Jira, where we are automatically creating it. You can select Push to Jira. Now you see the ticket automatically being created also on the Jira side, and it is visible its ticket number. You can open the ticket and take a look at how it looks like on the Jira side. You can see everything we have done on StoriesOnBoard, it's automatically synchronized to the Jira interface. You can see title changes is automatically updating any of the direction on StoriesOnBoard and Jira side. Any changes in details in description of the user story will also automatically update both of the platforms. You can change statuses also that will be synchronized back to the story map since we set up the integration settings and mapped our workflows to StoriesOnBoard. You also see where the ticket is belonging to. You can see MVP is the release that the ticket being created on StoriesOnBoard and it's connecting to Xamine product epic. We can see that on the story map that is correct and even the changes arrived to this board. The card taking place in the MVP release under Xamine product. Now any change will automatically update the Jira ticket also on the other side. If I'm opening now the ticket after moving it to another epic, you can see now it's automatically showing on the Jira side, it's connecting currently to the Find Product epic, which is correct on the story map as well. Of course, if your team is creating new items on the Jira side, they can also import it into StoriesOnBoard. I created a new issue on the Jira side, which is not yet present on the story map. In this case, a red dot will indicate something has happened on the Jira side, which is not yet present on the story map. By clicking on the Import Syncing Changes from Jira side icon, new cards will be imported into the StoriesOnBoard. You can see a new story arrive from Jira, taking place on the story map in the release 1, connecting to the Select Product epic. If you define this connection, we automatically import to the right location on the story map your new issue. If you do not define the structure, it will be imported into the story map into the unscheduled card area, where you can place it on the right place on the story map. On StoriesOnBoard, every release has a dedicated release overview. You can incorporate here release goals, release summaries, or any information that helps to your team to deliver a relevant release for your users. You can enter the start and end date of your release and the state of your release itself. You can also access release-specific reports based on the card statuses and estimation effort reports according to the user stories taking place within the release itself. You can also use StoriesOnBoard AI Assistant to write you a high-level release summary or a release announcement without even the need to opening every single card on the board to tackle its information. If it's required to update your integration settings, you can anytime visit your integration details between StoriesOnBoard and Jira and update its components. You can even utilizing import according to your jQuery query. In this case, you can write the query or copy it to StoriesOnBoard into this field, and we will import from Jira and keep it in sync between the story map and Jira project only those items in your backlog which is matching your query. And now it is your turn to take advantage of the real-time and bidirectional integration between StoriesOnBoard and your Jira backlog.